Alright, so it turns out that this build might actually be exceedingly good, a little bit better than I thought at least, and it relies on resetting the cooldown on your Death Trap ultimate extremely quickly by abusing Smoke Grenade, of all things. How exactly does it pull this off? Well, we're going to get into this during the extent of this video. You're going to learn all about this build and learn how to adapt it for your own purposes, because it is a fun one, and let me tell you, it's actually pretty damn good for clearing content that's a little bit out of your level range. If you want to start pushing sigils that are a little bit higher up and you don't quite have the gear for that, this build is pretty damn good because it's using Smoke Grenade and because it keeps your opponents crowd controlled for the entire time that you are constantly spamming your death traps. So it's pretty damn good. And panning on over to my character here, we have the ultimate that designed or was the backbone of this entire build, and this is the explosive verve aspect, which reads your grenade skills count as trap skills. Forget the rest of it. That's the only bit that matters. I repeat, your grenade skills count as trap skills. What exactly does that mean? Well, it means that your smoke grenade and this 4-second daze effect now counts as a trap effect as well as a grenade effect. Why is that so important? Well, if we head on into the skill tree and scroll all the way down to the key passive here at the bottom, we have exposure, which is on lucky hit, dealing direct damage to an enemy affected by a trap skill or smoke grenade. Has a 25% chance to reduce the active cooldown on your trap skills by 20%. Extremely good stuff. You can see how the juices go flowing pretty quickly, and we start to build an entire build, based around this legendary. The result of building around these two abilities, again, results in a build where you can just kind of stun lock your opponents constantly. It sort of doesn't matter the fact that, okay, like I'm doing less damage in these clips because my gear is a little bit behind. We haven't really completely refined the build yet and stuff like that, but you can see the success that we have in Weld Tier 4 sigils against these red enemies, you know, even though it takes me a while to kind of get them down because my damage is a little bit behind, they're actually just not able to out-damage my things like my barrier generation, and they're just not able to get many hits in, you know, so the build works out pretty damn good. Alright, so actually heading on into the build itself, I'm just going to focus on the big parts here, to be fair. I like to go into Barrage here. You can obviously play Twisting Blades, you can even play something like Rapid Fire Flurry, it's kind of personal preference, but for me, Barrage and its reliable ability to spread your imbuement effects and, as you can read here with Improved Barrage, apply Vulnerable to enemies en masse. Barrage is just my ability of choice here in the beginning. By all means, customize there as you see fit. Now, there's a couple of abilities here in the agility skills that we go into that are extremely, extremely important. One of them is Rapid Gambits. I'd recommend every time at least 1 point, if not 2, into Rapid Gambits to make sure that you are farming evade cooldown reduction because your opponents are going to be dazed basically all of the time. Right, you're going to be applying daze effects left, right. So yeah, you're going to have evade constantly. Like, it's never going to be on cooldown, pretty much. Next up, we go into trick attacks. This one's really important too. When you critically strike a dazed enemy, they get knocked down for 1.5 seconds. They're always going to be dazed, and because you're a rogue, you're going to be critting a pretty decent amount as well. So yeah, extremely, extremely good stuff. And do remember these talents as well, because I'm going to cover aspects after these, and you're going to see how our aspects feed into this build. Obviously, we go into Smoke Grenade, making sure to pick up Countering Smoke Grenade, so that dealing direct damage to enemies affected by smoke has a 25% chance to reduce its cooldown by 1 second, or by 3 seconds if the enemy is vulnerable. So yeah, Smoke Grenade basically has like a 1 second cooldown with this build. Absolutely crazy stuff. Moving on down a little bit here, I'd normally recommend you just go into Poison Imbuement for your second imbue effect. I've actually gone into Cold Imbuement just because I have some unique gloves that freeze my target. And I just want to capitalize on those with some extra damage to chilled and frozen enemies. Otherwise, I would totally just recommend you go into Poison Imbuement. The only reason for the second imbuement, by the way, is to increase your single target kill potential and your single target damage potential, which otherwise this build basically has none of. So it's very, very important that you have a way to actually do things like kill bosses and stuff like that, right? Down here at the bottom of the tree, we have some interesting choices as well. I would highly recommend this for this build. 3 points in Second Wind and 3 points in Alchemist's Fortune to maximize your lucky hit chance as much as humanly possible. Without a good amount of lucky hit chance in this build, you're going to really struggle to get the exposure procs on your lucky hit chance. And yeah, this is not going to be very effective. You're not going to be resetting the cooldown on your death trap anywhere near as quickly as you could be. Yeah, actually, I think that's pretty much it. That's the long and short of it, man. As for the gear, we've got some interesting choices here. Some things that I think are extremely useful to know that I'll go into in just a little bit. So if we scroll on down, we have a very, very important aspect on my weapon here. This is the Obsidian Blade of Surprise, so the aspect of surprise, I guess. And it reads, when you evade, you leave behind a cluster of exploding stun grenades that deal a bit of damage and stun enemies for half a second. Why is this so goddamn good? Well, because stun grenades count as traps in this build because of our headgear, right? Remember, your grenade skills count as trap skills, right? So we're just maximizing the amount of grenades that we are dropping because they all count as traps. What does that mean? It means that if I get a lucky hit attack against someone who is stunned by these stun grenades, it'll count as an exposure hit and it will reduce the cooldown on my death trap by another 10 seconds. You know what I'm saying? It's just another form of, yeah, applying a grenade effect to your targets. And that's why I would so highly recommend, like I mentioned before, putting at least 1 or 2 points into rapid gambits, so you are farming evade cooldowns and you are constantly spamming evade throughout your fights. It's so goddamn important. Next up we have ways of making enemies constantly vulnerable and ways of making enemies constantly dazed. Right here we have the Mangler's aspect on our boots, which is dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy, has a 37% chance to daze them for 2 seconds. And I believe it's on one of our rings. Dealing direct damage to enemies affected by your trap skills has a chance to make them vulnerable for 3 seconds. And again, it's not just our trap skills, remember, it's our grenades that count as traps as well, right? So we are spreading vulnerability so quickly and so consistently with this build that they're basically always going to be vulnerable. So the effect that's on these boots right now, these Mangler's boots, is going to be constantly dazing these guys. And when they're dazed, crits against them are going to knock them down, right? So it has crazy synergy with our talent skills that we have built into. Now, next up, I should also mention a pretty key thing about this build, and that's that if you're trying to push content that's 7, 8, 9, 10 levels higher than your current level, you're pushing it to well tier 4 content maybe for the first time, be ready to get absolutely annihilated and one-shotted, like I did, by the way, when trying this build, if you do not invest in survival aspects. You need some defensive aspects, you need some defensive paragon points. It's the only way you're going to live. Why is it so important? Well, it should be kind of obvious, but you're kind of dragging, 2, 3, 4 packs of monsters together to AoE them down. If you don't have enough armor, and if you don't have a way to generate a barrier, you're just going to get one-shotted, man. You're just going to get off-screened by a corpse bow, or you're going to get one-tapped by an elite, or you're going to get stunned one time and die instantly as a result. You can't be the ultra-squishy rogue that you might have been up until this point, right? If you're going to play this build, you need at least to have the stay ability to actually pull mobs together and do these big-ass pulls, right? So, yeah, that is why I would highly recommend picking up some defensive aspects to kind of print onto your gear. Here we have a pretty basic one to reduce incoming damage by 20% after using a basic skill. I also went for, where is it? Here it is. The Umbrus Amulet, the Umbrus Aspect, or whatever this is. Critical strikes with marksman skills have a chance to grant a free Dark Shroud Shadow, which, yeah, helps parry some damage as well. I'd also recommend the legendary aspect that upon damaging an elite minion, or an elite monster, you instantly get a barrier. That's great. I actually really looked out and got these legs right here, these unique legs, Temerity, which is effects that heal you beyond 100% life grant you a barrier, up to 70% in this case, of my maximum life that lasts for 8 seconds. These are just incredible, you know, I'm self-healing quite a bit on kill and stuff like that, so the amount of barrier I'm generating during these fights is, yeah, pretty sweet, and that's helping me out a lot. If I go into my Paragon board as well, you'll also notice that I've actually taken the time finally to invest in some defensive nodes. So like over here, for example, we have 8% damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. We've built into some armor as well over here. Same thing over here too. We picked up a swollen armor node over there, which we're actually lacking the strength for right now, which is pretty funny. I don't know where that went. But yeah, armor here. Important stuff, right? I was getting one-shotted until I made these goddamn changes, and now things are grand. I suppose I should also mention too that I made some changes to my skill tree in order to be more survivable as well. You'll notice we have 3 points in Sturdy, so we're gaining 12% close damage reduction, as well as 3 points in Siphoning Strikes, so we're healing for 3% of our max life when we crit against close enemies, which is basically all enemies, you know what I'm saying? So take care of your defensives, they're very, very important. Make sure that you're not just getting absolutely one-shotted, and you're going to have a grand old time with this build. And just before we wrap up, a couple of things I should also mention as well. In gear, I'm actually gemming orange gems, just because the only way you can really die with this build is if you get stunned, or if you get caught by some monster CC, and just get one-shotted. So yeah, I'm gemming for damage reduction while control impaired, and feeling pretty good about that. And in weapon, we are gemming emerald for damage against vulnerable enemies. Look at that useless imprinted imbuement on this weapon, by the way. Oh my god. We need to fix that. Yeah, it's still a build in progress. I haven't really decided what I'm going to put on the old two-handed weapon just yet. I should also mention that I prefer this build personally with a crossbow. And the reason for that is bows provide damage against distant enemies as a bonus. If you can see it right there on the tooltip, 56% damage to distant enemies. Not great. We are very, very close range with this build. So yeah, really, really not ideal, but this is just the best weapon I've found up until this point. Crossbow would almost definitely be better. Next up, specializations. I probably recommend preparation, just because you can get caught in some awkward spots sometimes where you get very, very unlucky rolls, and you just don't lucky hit enough to be consistently resetting your trap cooldown. It does happen from time to time. Preparation is just like a safety net against that, and combo points, while they are good, and I was using combo points in some of the clips that I showed in this video, honestly, generating combo points to empower your barrage with this build just doesn't feel like that big of a deal. In fact, it's just not that big of a deal. It's just not that important. I'd recommend preparation. If you prefer one of the others, totally up to you. It can work either way. But alright, thanks for watching everybody. Hope you all enjoyed, man. Make sure you like, subscribe, all of that good stuff for more videos like this, and more from our happy little Kara the Rogue here. I shall catch all of you guys just a tad bit later.
Greetings.